My friend Pete called me last Sunday night, and he was in a place I have seen a lot of people in their 50s land. He had spent the afternoon running retirement calculators online, the way you do when you've been putting it off for years and finally get up the courage to actually look. The number that came back was $1.46 million. He's 51, has about $185,000 saved, and the math told him he was $1,270,000 short of being able to retire at any reasonable age. He told me, and I'm quoting him exactly because the line stuck with me, "Tom, I think I just have to accept that I'm going to work until I die." Pete is wrong, but not for the reason he thinks. The number that came back at him is built on a misunderstanding of how retirement income actually works. Pete's actual portfolio target, once you stop using the broken calculator and start using a different framework, is closer to $1 million even, and the gap between where he is and where he needs to be is genuinely closable on a high school teacher's salary. By the end of this video, Pete is going to know that, and so are you. The math is going to feel different than what the magic number industry has been selling you for the last 20 years. That is the point. I'm Tom. This channel is about real personal finance, the kind that actually works for normal people instead of the kind that gets you to click on a thumbnail. No motivational fluff, no fantasy returns, no get rich quick. Just what the math actually does over time. If that's what you want, hit subscribe. Today's video is for anyone in their 40s, 50s, or 60s who has looked at a retirement calculator and felt the floor drop out. The framework I am going to walk you through is called the $1,000 per month rule. It is not new. It comes from a financial planner named Wes Moss, who has been writing about it for years. What I want to do today is take that rule, apply it honestly to the 2026 reality, and rebuild it as something Pete and you can actually use this week. Let me start with what the rule says, because the original version is the easiest to understand, and we'll modify it in a minute. Wes Moss's version says that for every $1,000 in monthly income you want your retirement portfolio to generate, you need to have $240,000 saved. The math is a 5% withdrawal rate. $240,000 at 5% generates $12,000 a year, which is $1,000 a month. I'm going to use a slightly more conservative version through the rest of this video because 5% is too aggressive for most retirements that need to last 25 to 30 years. The version I'll use says you need $300,000 for every $1,000 of monthly portfolio income, which is the math at a 4% withdrawal rate. This is the rate the original Trinity study found gave a portfolio a very high probability of lasting through a 30-year retirement. It's the same rate most retirement researchers use today, and it is the safer one for people in their 50s to plan around. I'll explain the difference between 4 and 5% in more detail later. For now, just know that throughout this video, every brick of retirement income is $300,000. Here is why I think this framing is more useful than the standard magic number approach, especially for people in their 50s. The 1.46 million figure that scared Pete treats retirement as a single mountain you have to summit before you can stop. The $1,000 per month rule treats retirement as a wall you build one brick at a time. Each brick is $300,000 of invested money, and each brick covers $1,000 of monthly expenses for the rest of your life. You don't need to build the whole wall at once. You build the bricks you need in the order you need them until your wall is tall enough to cover what your life actually costs. Let me run Pete's specific situation, because this is where the magic number framework breaks and the brick framework starts working. Pete and his wife spend about $6,000 a month. That covers their housing, including taxes and insurance, food, healthcare, transportation, utilities, and a modest budget for the things that make life feel like life. At a $1.46 million target, The math says they need 4.87 bricks of monthly income, which at $300,000 a brick is $1.46 million exactly. That is the scary number Pete saw. But the brick framework lets you do something the magic number framework cannot. It lets you subtract. Social Security is not optional, and it is not small. The average Social Security benefit for retired workers in 2026 is $2,071 per month per individual per the latest Social Security Administration data. Pete's specific projected benefit at his full retirement age of 67, based on his 30-year career, is around $2,400 a month. His wife's benefit is similar. Together, their household will receive roughly $4,800 a month from Social Security, every month for the rest of their lives, indexed to inflation. That is almost 5 bricks of monthly income that the federal government already built and paid for on Pete's behalf through his payroll taxes for the last 30 years. Pete doesn't need to fund those 5 bricks from his portfolio. They come pre-built. So let's redo Pete's math. He needs $6,000 a month total. Social Security covers $4,800. His actual gap is $1,200 a month, not $6,000. That's 1.2 bricks instead of 4.87. At $300,000 per brick, his real portfolio target is roughly $360,000, not $1.46 million. The number that made Pete tell me he was going to work until he died was overcounting his actual need by about $1.1 million, because the calculator he used implicitly assumed his portfolio had to fund expenses Social Security was already going to cover. When I told Pete this on Sunday night, he made me run the math 3 times because he did not believe it. He had been carrying $1.46 million around in his head for so long that the idea of needing $360,000 instead felt like a trick. It isn't. That's just what happens when you stop running the wrong calculation. This is the part of the video I think is genuinely important for people in their 50s to hear, because most of you have been carrying the wrong target around in your head for years. Your real target is not your gross monthly expense times some multiplier. It is your gross monthly expense minus Social Security, minus any pension, minus any other guaranteed income source, multiplied by 300. That difference is the difference between feeling hopeless and feeling like you have a real plan. I want to be specific about who this math works for and who it doesn't, because I'd rather tell you the truth now than have you do the calculation wrong and feel betrayed in 5 years. The example I just walked through assumed a couple where both spouses have full Social Security histories, a paid-off house, and a $6,000 monthly budget. If you're single, your Social Security income is going to be roughly half of what I calculated for Pete's household, which doubles the portfolio gap. If you spent significant years not working or earning low wages, your Social Security benefit will be below the $2,071 average. And if your retirement budget is closer to $9,000 or $10,000 a month because you live in a high-cost area or have premium expectations, the math doesn't shrink the same way. The brick framework still works for all of those cases. You just count more bricks. None of this means everyone needs $360,000. Everyone's real number is their gross expense minus guaranteed income times 300. Run your specific version, not Pete's. Now I have to be honest about what the original $1,000 per month rule does not handle well. Because if I leave these out, I'm just selling you a comforting fiction, and Tom doesn't do that on this channel. There are 3 real problems with the rule, and you need to know about all 3 before you commit to any number. The first problem is the withdrawal rate I already mentioned. The original Wes Moss version uses 5%. The math is more generous, but the failure rate over a 25 or 30-year retirement is meaningfully higher than the 4% version I've been using. If you retire at 65 and live to 90, you're looking at a 25-year retirement, which is borderline for a 5% rate. Retire earlier or live longer, and 5% gets riskier. Using $300,000 per brick instead of $240,000 gives your portfolio a much better chance of surviving everything the next 25 to 30 years can throw at it. The math is slightly less generous, but the safety margin is substantially better. For Pete specifically, the difference between 5% and 4% is the difference between a $288,000 target and a $360,000 target. Both are below half of $1.46 million. The second problem is inflation. The rule does not adjust for it, and inflation eats real purchasing power over a 25-year retirement. The way to handle this in practice is to keep your portfolio invested in something that grows over time, which means a meaningful allocation to stocks, not just bonds and cash. A portfolio that earns roughly 7% average real returns can support 4% withdrawals while continuing to grow at about 3% per year, which is enough to keep pace with typical inflation. The brick math still works. It just requires that the bricks remain invested in something productive, not stuffed under a mattress. Social Security, by the way, does adjust for inflation through its annual cost of living adjustments, which is one of the underrated reasons it's so valuable as the foundation of retirement income. The third problem is taxes. If your bricks are sitting in a traditional 401k, the dollars that come out are taxable as ordinary income. A $1,000 monthly withdrawal from a traditional 401k is more like $750 to $850 of usable money, depending on your tax bracket. If your bricks are in a Roth IRA, the withdrawals are tax-free. Money in a taxable brokerage account gets long-term capital gains treatment on the growth portion. This is why where your bricks are stored matters enormously. A rough adjustment for someone with most of their savings in pre-tax accounts is to add 20 to 25% to your portfolio target to account for the tax you'll pay on withdrawals. For Pete, that bumps his $360,000 target up toward $440,000 to $450,000, depending on his expected tax bracket. Still well under half of $1.46 million. Let me put all of this together into the framework Pete and I worked through on his kitchen table this Tuesday night. Start by writing down your honest monthly expenses in retirement. Use what you actually spend now, plus a healthcare adjustment if you currently get insurance through work, minus anything that goes away, like commuting costs or work clothes or your mortgage if it'll be paid off by then. Once you have that number, subtract your expected Social Security income, which you can find by logging into your account at ssa.gov. Then subtract any pension or other guaranteed income. What's left over is your actual gap, the amount your portfolio needs to fund per month. Multiply that gap by 300 and add 20% if your savings are mostly in traditional pre-tax accounts. That number is your real target. Pete ran this exact exercise. His monthly expenses are $6,000. His Social Security at 67 is projected at $2,400 a month. His wife's is $2,400. He has no pension. His gap is $1,200 a month. Multiply by 300 gives $360,000. Add 25% for taxes, since most of his savings are in a traditional 403b, and his real target is $450,000. He has $185,000 today and 14 years until 67. If he just lets his current $185,000 compound at a 7% real return for those 14 years without adding anything, it grows to roughly $490,000 by retirement. Pete is already past his target without adding another dollar. He has been thinking he needs to find $1.27 million in 14 years. He actually needs to find zero, because the math he was running was wrong. This is the part of the video I want you to sit with for a minute. Pete is not financially extraordinary. He's a high school teacher with a $185,000 nest egg, which the average personal finance commentary would tell you is dangerously behind. By the actual math, he is fine. Not rich, not lavishly retired, but fine. He can stop work at 67 and live the life he actually wants to live, in his actual house, with his actual budget, without running out of money. The thing standing between Pete and that retirement was not money. It was a calculation. The calculation that scared him into thinking he had to work until he died was off by more than $1 million. For people who are watching this and thinking your math doesn't work out as cleanly as Pete's, I want to spend the last few minutes on something specifically for you. The brick framework has a hidden advantage that the magic number framework doesn't have, which is that bricks are cumulative, and partial bricks count. Most retirement content treats the goal as binary. You either hit your number or you don't. If you don't hit it, you are scared. The brick framework lets you see your retirement filling up incrementally. The first brick covers your housing. The second covers food. The third covers healthcare. As you build each brick, you can point to a specific category of life that is now funded. This is psychologically very different from saying, I'm $700,000 short of my goal. It is, I have my housing brick built, I'm halfway through my food brick, and I haven't started on healthcare yet. That framing tells you what to do next, which is build the food brick the rest of the way and then start on healthcare. The magic number framing just tells you you're behind. Here is the math I want to leave you with, because it's genuinely encouraging if you let it land. Someone who is 45 today with $0 in retirement savings, who starts contributing $400 a month at a 7% real return, will have approximately $208,000 by age 65. That is just under one full brick. Combined with average Social Security, that gives them about $4,200 a month of total retirement income, which is below the average, but well above the survival line. Someone the same age who can manage $800 a month builds 1.7 bricks, ending around $416,000, which combined with Social Security puts them in genuinely comfortable territory at $5,800 a month. Push it to $1,500 a month, and you build over 3 bricks, ending around $780,000, which is more than enough to retire on a normal middle-class lifestyle without ever stressing about money again. The point of the rule is not to tell you that retirement is easy. It isn't. What the rule does tell you is that the gap between where you are and where you need to be is almost certainly smaller than the magic number industry has been selling you. You don't need $1.46 million. You need enough bricks to cover the difference between your monthly expenses and your guaranteed income sources. For most Americans, that difference is between 2 and 4 bricks. Every brick is something you can see, count, and build toward, one paycheck at a time. If your honest answer after running this exercise is that you are still going to fall short, that is real information, not failure information. It tells you specifically what to do, which is some combination of working a few more years, lowering your retirement expenses, claiming Social Security at a different age to maximize the benefit, or finding a way to get more invested between now and then. All 4 of those are real levers, and each of them is more useful than staring at a $1.46 million number and feeling defeated. The brick framework gives you the diagnostic. The diagnostic gives you the action. Pete called me back yesterday. He had run his math 3 more times, including with 2 different online calculators that let him plug in his actual Social Security estimate. He told me he hasn't decided yet whether he'll retire at 65 or 67, but for the first time in years, he believes he can retire at all. That is what I want this video to do for you. The number you've been told to fear is almost certainly wrong. Your real number is smaller. Run the calculation honestly. Build your bricks deliberately, and let Social Security do the work it's already going to do. Drop a comment with how many bricks you currently have built, even if it's a partial brick. I read every comment, and I'll reply to as many as I can. And if you want me to walk through the single decision that has the biggest impact on the math we just did, which is when to claim Social Security, hit subscribe, because that's the next video. I'll see you in the next one.